There's a lot of money that can help buyers in today's real estate transaction, and it does not have to come from the seller.
Basically, employer-assisted housing is where you, as a licensed agent, can go into a corporation and you can help that employer with retention by offering employer-assisted housing programs. I could show you how to help your employees lessen the challenges of getting to work. For me, employer-assisted housing is a win-win all the way around.
What's going on, world? And today we're here to talk about solutions. But you know what's kind of interesting about our guest? This is her second appearance on Social Selling Made Simple. Miss Ebony Killian is one of only 17 EAH instructors in the country. What does EAH stand for? Employer Assisted Housing. Now, ever since Friday, March the 15th, when NAR made their settlement announcement, instantly I went in to concentrate on solutions, not on the problem. And there's a lot of money that can help buyers in today's real estate transaction, and it does not have to come from the seller. I'm going to just say that. And it does not have to come from the seller. And so today we're going to discuss one of those options in great detail, because you can hire Ebony to come into your local marketplace to teach you all about the employer-assisted housing. What's going on today, Ebony?
What's going on? Happy Friday. You know, that doesn't mean much in real estate, but happy Friday.
Yep. Happy Friday. I was talking to Skylar, and since he's gotten back home from, where did he go? No, he did not go to Colombia, but he did go to South America. It's going to come back to me in a hot second where he went. So he went on vacation. Then he went to Howard's homecoming. So he came back as soon as his feet hit the ground. He was out here writing a contract every single day. So his goal now is, can he write a contract every single day till the end of the year? And we got some agents out here, baby, they are 100% unbothered, could care less about anything any negativity, right? And to me, the employer-assisted housing program is one of the things that a licensed real estate professional can implement that will make them unbothered, that will allow them to become a solution. So tell us about the employer-assisted housing and how can agents leverage this?
Marky, the employer-assisted housing program was something that that I didn't create it. It started years ago. And basically, employer-assisted housing is where you, as a licensed agent, can go into a corporation and you can help that employer with retention by offering employer-assisted housing programs. And they range from you can have something as simple as contracting with the employer saying, hey, can we come in and host a workshop for all of your employees on how to buy a house and help them get closer to work, because the commute time I've been talking to teachers, I've been talking to principals. One of my good friends that graduated from high school with me is a principal at a local elementary school. She said, Ebony, we are the highest paid for teachers. And I just lost one of my 7-year, 10-year teachers because she lives in Duluth and we're in Atlanta. So that is like a 45 to 60-minute commute every day.
So that school could have arranged to provide not just that teacher, but any staff, essentially a forgivable grant.
Correct.
To offset their closing costs.
Absolutely.
But today, that means so much more. So the EAH, I took the class, I want to say 15 years ago, here in Chicago, down at the Intercontinental Hotel. And instantly, Red Gold, which is one of the largest tomato companies in the country, located in rural Indiana, reached out to me to help them set up an employer-assisted housing program because they wanted to attract more talent to rural Indiana, but they also wanted to retain the current talent that they have. And I referred that to another agent who was in the EAH class with me. So now I'm thinking all these different companies can give their employees essentially a forgivable grant. But what we have to think about today as licensed real estate professionals is our ability to get a signed buyer representation agreement signed with an offer of compensation.
Absolutely.
Especially if you are reading the opportunity report that just came out this week from Poll. They came out with the danger report a decade ago, which, if you looked at it, I believe is 83% accurate. So every danger that they identified a decade ago for our industry has come to pass at this point. What they're telling you now is, let's talk about our opportunity. And what they're saying is there will be a decoupling of compensation. That means if I keep on hearing this same thing about compensation, then that means that as a buyer agent, it is not enough to just have a signed buyer representation agreement.
Correct.
I need to demonstrate my value, and I need to ask. Not only do I need to ask the buyer for the money, I need to ask the buyer for the most money humanly possible initially, because if you read what the Department of Justice says, I can't accept more than is what is in that initial agreement. And they find it unethical for me to go back and renegotiate a higher amount of compensation.
Correct.
So when I'm thinking EAH, I'm thinking this is another source of funds to the real estate transaction.
Yeah.
And if I become an expert of this subject in my state, my city, my county, my census tract, my zip code, pick one, right? And own it, that I can have an abundance of opportunity to be compensated because I've done something my competitors have not done.
Absolutely. And you make a good point with the abundance of opportunities, right? I'll take that and I'll go with that. There's nothing that states that you cannot couple the down payment grant that you can get an employer to agree to with another down payment assistance program that is in the county, whether it's locally or nationally, and get the most amount of down payment assistance for your buyer that you can. The reason I like employer-assisted housing programs also is, one, the ability to help employers understand a way for retention. You're helping them. You're giving them a win-win, right? But you're also, I feel like the first thing, we covered the first thing, I know they got a job. I know they have income. So
Then they got a job. Amen.
So we can work with that,
You know they got a job. Now I want to come back because you said get people closer to work. And what comes to mind, which is crazy, is the book, The Color of Law. And in The Color of Law, they talk about Richmond, California, which actually a movie was filmed with, I got to think of his name, but he was the coach out of Richmond, California. And when I was watching this movie years ago, I was trying to figure out, why was Richmond so freaking poor in California? Well, in The Color of Law, the reason that Richmond was poor was because a new auto plant had been built. And all of the white employees were able to move into the housing in close proximity to the new auto plant. However, they were not extending loans to people of color. So that meant that people of color had to spend an additional 45 minutes to an hour commuting back and forth, which instantly increased their cost of living. So all of the white people moved out of Richmond to the locations that were closer in proximity. But when we think about, and so I like to point that out, because had Black people been able to also relocate, right, and had there been an employee assisted housing program, their value would never have been depreciated in Richmond disproportionately.
Correct. And you're talking about Coach Carter. So
I'm talking about Coach Carter. You got it. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Absolutely.
And so now what I'm thinking We have the University of Chicago here on the south side of the city of
Mhm.
Chicago. They give their employees up to $20,000 in EAH for 9 dedicated communities on the south side of the city of Chicago. So imagine when we're sitting here and we're thinking about down payment, we're thinking closing cost credit, we're thinking signed buyer representation agreement with an offer of compensation. We're putting $20,000 into the transaction in the form of a forgivable grant. So we're not asking that buyer to finance
No.
anything more, right? Period. Actually, in some situations, they might finance less, right?
Right.
Um, be able to buy the house, be able to buy it essentially faster rather than later, so that they'll have the opportunity to build wealth and create a legacy.
Right.
Retention, you talked about that for the company. So what are the benefits when we think about different companies or new companies, emerging companies, for them to set up these EAHs for their employees?
So retention is one thing. When I asked many of the employers that I am talking to, and just, I started small. Retention is one of the big things. They had a high turnover rate for employees. And one of the things that I started talking about to some of my friends and some of these CEOs was, if I could show you how to help your employees lessen the challenges of getting to work, would you be interested? Would you be interested in something like that? Because they are saving on training employees, retention, starting over. So they were looking for a solution. With that solution, also, they become a staple in a community because you're helping your employees get houses within a proximity. Take, for instance, the University of Chicago, in a proximity of where they work. You're selling homes. The home values are stabilizing and raising, as well as helping your employee create generational wealth.
What I'm also thinking, if we thought about the University of Chicago, it's also putting their employees in a position to be able to walk to work, to ride a bike to work, to ride a scooter to work, and or to carpool. So if I know my girl, lives 6 blocks, right, I might even park at her house,
Correct.
right? And leave my bike at her house, and we gone and we get healthy together, right? So now it can increase physical activity,
Mhm.
reduce the carbon footprint, and they're happier.
Yep.
I hate traffic. Like, one of the joys of being a realtor is the ability to do reverse commute.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I hate traffic. So I think it was last week. I was in Chicago. I drove from Chicago up to Wisconsin, back to Chicago, and then I had to drive out to one of the local suburbs. I was exhausted and I was sitting in traffic. It was like the most non productive use of my time
The use of your time. Exactly. Exactly.
ever.
And if you think about, and for proximity wise, for me here in Atlanta, now I'm back closer to the city, which is East Lake, and I live literally um, an exit away from our office, right? But I used to live 45 to 60 minutes away. But that 45 to 60 minutes away, depending on what time you leave, what time you go home. Marky, sometimes I would be in traffic for 90 minutes. So by the time I got home, I'm irritated and I don't want to talk to anyone. But think about sitting in traffic for 90 minutes, unproductive time, like you said. Then by the time I get to where I'm going, I don't want to talk to anybody. So if you have kids, you got to engage with them. Nobody's cooking after sitting in traffic for 90 minutes. If I hadn't prepared dinner, we're going to eat takeout. And then it's time to go to bed and do it all over again the next day.
Yeah, that commute is a big factor. So they're able to retain. But here's what's interesting. So yesterday or the day before yesterday, Skylar made a post with about the grants and the closing statement and the amount of cash that his buyers have needed to bring to the deal. So I'm just going to rattle off some numbers. So imagine that through an employer assisted housing, your buyers had to bring this amount of money to the closing table. How many more people could you put in the house? $316.28, $153.70, $262.97, $121.82, $0. Refunds, $243.66, refund, $777.86, and his number one refund was over $3,100. So not only does he have a pipeline of potential buyers, he told me based on his current pipeline, his goal is to write a deal every day for the duration of the year. Now, let me say this. If you get 30 under contract in 30 days, I think you're going to be exhausted. I told him that. I said, but look, you're 28, you don't have any children, and you don't have a significant other. Run it, baby. Run it. Let me see how good you are. Run that and keep up with it. To me, 30 under contract at a time is overwhelming, but this is what he said. Then that just means I need to hire more help. That, you know what? That's exactly what that means. But when you putting up these type of numbers, right, and you getting people on these closing statements, all of this money back, then they're referring other people to you. And what I would recommend, which is something Skylar has done, he schedules a $25,000 grant qualifying call. I've been telling people over the last month, I think we need to change our buyer consultations. And our buyer consultation, I think there are two new questions we should ask every buyer, period. We should ask them, is there any gifts that they can receive from a loved one or someone who is close to them? So I want to know, how many gift funds can you ask for to infuse into the real estate transaction? The next thing I want to know, does your employer have an EAH program? And if not, put me in touch with the Director of Human Resources. But look, if the lender's doing a verification of employment, we should have that information anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are some of the first steps that a licensed real estate professional should take in exploring this as an option for their buyers?
So one of the first steps that they should take is thinking about how many employers they know can feel, touch, and reach out to. We're in a relationship business, so I would see within my sphere of who I can reach out to see if I can implement this program. Another thing too is I like that question: does your employer have an EAH program? Ask your client. Ask your client, and that would be the first step. Second step is they do want to identify a housing counselor as well as a preferred lender partner. And those will be your two collaborative partners in an EAH program. Your housing counselor, you may get employees that aren't ready yet. So they need that financial literacy piece. They need access to that 8-hour certificate or a certificate to qualify for down payment assistance as well, or additional down payment assistance. Your lender is going to be key because they're going to help you find additional funding to add to the employer's grants or down payment assistance. It can be as small as a down payment grant that they'll match a down payment grant. That is the second step.
So here's what just came to mind. You said employers you know who you could reach out to. Instantly, what I thought about, one of my ships, that means we pledged together. I'm not going to mention her name, but she has a master's degree and she oversees human resources, or did, at St. Jude, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, right, for all my Memphis folks, then I could develop a referral for an EAH, right? But I instantly start thinking about I'm in a sorority. I have a ton of sorority sisters who oversee human resources because it is a female dominated industry, right? That I could easily reach out. And I'm talking they the VP, the director of human resources, right? To offer this as an opportunity. So now if anybody out here who's in a sorority, any of my Divine Nine and non-Divine Nine, right? Real estate agents, think of that. Think about your past clients who might be in human resources that you could go back and say, hey, I wish at the time that I put you in this house, we knew about this, but let me help you with your retention at the organization in which you work for by doing these things. Also, I'm almost sure, and I never thought about this from the company standpoint, if I provide my employees with down payment assistance grants, it allows me to reduce my taxable income.
Absolutely. That's the win for the employer.
100. It reduces the company's taxable income.
That is one of the wins for the employer.
So now think about, is there a new Amazon plant coming? What are the new hospitals and facilities coming? What are the new technology companies coming, especially if it's a tech company not in Silicon Valley, not in Austin, Miami, New York, where they are known for attracting the best talent. How do you put yourself as a company in the position to attract and retain the best talent?
Absolutely. And even when just as you were speaking, I was just thinking about even the companies coming, right? New Amazon plants coming. Could you infuse a relocation with that?
Oh, I 100% believe you can infuse yes.
Relocation, right?
You are the relocation now. Like,
You are the relocation, but then we started this conversation off with opportunities to where and solution oriented, to where agents never want to have to worry about compensation, right? So even if you infuse the relocation with that, could you create a referral based where you're getting referrals from agents that you can't help that are in your marketplace through that relocation EAH program? Like, hey, I know such and such from where you're coming from. Do you know anybody else? They can help do this same program in that area. So
now,
the opportunities are endless.
and what I'm thinking about instantly when you start talking about the partnership, right? Janice Simmons, she's with us at Exit, but she's a vice president of one of the community development corporations. So that would be my counseling agent. And then I could I'll go with one of Skylar's preferred lenders, Janita, right? Who also has a plethora of grants. So not only could we ask for gifts, we could then look at the EAH. We could look at all of the different grant programs. And from a buyer standpoint, this is going to reduce the amount of money they bring, but start thinking about an interest buy down. Okay, so let's buy this interest rate down.
Yep.
And it's a win-win. One, is a lot of down payment assistance money still in the streets or grants. And we're setting these buyers up for great success. And this is not like, because I heard somebody talking, and my background is in lending. So I was a certified residential mortgage specialist before I ever became a licensed broker. And they wanted to say, well, how many people are going to end in default? Well, here's the thing. We're not talking about no income, no asset verification loans. We're not talking about 2 and 3 year ARMs where the interest rate did nothing but adjust up. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
They're talking about they qualify debt to income ratio wise. Maybe they weren't able to save for a down payment because they paid for themselves to get that undergrad and that master's degree, and they have student loan debt that they need to also address. We're not talking about those type of loans. This is not what that is. This is the ability to get financial help that you can leverage for your down payment, your closing cost, or do a interest buy down to ensure that you're in the day you close, a great qualifying position. So one thing one of the lenders said is when we start thinking about these grants and different programs, especially for that first time home buyer, right? They're going to get an increase in income over time, right? If they go back to school, they're likely going to be able to go in and ask for a promotion and or a raise. So I don't want us to think 2002 to 2007. This is not what that is. This is something totally different that is often frowned upon from people in real estate, not realizing that it is 100% a solution. And if I think about solutions, I'm thinking about Skylar. I'm thinking about Nicole Wheatley. And I looked at a picture last week. We have 253 agents. When I look at our top 10 agents right now, year to date, of the top 10, the number 1, the number 2, the number 4, and the number 6 all specialize in down payment assistance grant program.
But let me tell you too how that question about default and where your collaborative partners come in hand. Most housing counselors have post-education resources. So if a buyer finds themselves, life happens, right? You can always refer that buyer back to their counselor to help them not default on their mortgage. So that's where your collaboration comes in as key. So for me, employer assisted housing is a win-win all the way around because there's so many different resources after the purchase that HUD counselors or housing counselors have access to keep their clients and buyers in their home.
I love that. Post resources. Now, here in the city of Chicago, we had met with the Commissioner of Housing not too long ago, and they had stated when you think about those additional resources that we will likely see an increase in notice of default starting second quarter 2025 due to an increase in property taxes.
Sure.
And what we're looking at right now, because I want everybody to think about this because this can impact anyone that you've seen an increase in taxes. Contingent upon the county you live in, some of us pay our taxes 1 year in arrears. I live in a county that we pay our taxes 1 year in arrears. So it's 2024. We're actually paying our 2023 taxes. With that being stated, because we escrow for our homeowner's insurance and our taxes, the conversation that I had with my husband was, Steven, your mortgage is going up next year. And when it goes up, I don't want you to be shocked because what they're going to put in that payment is not only the arrears of the taxes, but enough to make sure that you become current in the next year. So it's kind of like a triple whammy, right? Because you got to pay what's in arrears, but then you got to set enough aside so that when the new tax bill comes out in the future, you have enough. So everybody who's listening right now, I want you to have this conversation with your homeowners because while everybody's getting ready to celebrate Christmas, they might want to cut Christmas a little bit short and be like, look, we believe in the power of home ownership. We know that we have equity in our house. We know that we're going to have this very large increase in our mortgage payment that's going to hurt for 12 to 18 months until we get it stabilized, where we got to pay what's in the past, but also what's in the future. So now going back to some of those post resources that might be available, there might be additional resources contingent upon where the property is located. But at some point, we also need to do everything that we can do. And that means that, hey, Christmas might be short, kids, and here's why it's short. Or, no, I really can't go to Tulum right now. I need to see what this new mortgage payment is going to look like because I have to pay this arrearage and I need to be caught up for next year, or we pay 2 times a year. So for the next quarter taxes. And these are just real conversations that we have to have because it's a reality of where we are right now. And right now we're in the election season, and there's definitely who's ever going to be the next candidate who can increase the taxes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so we talked about what an agent can do today. Where, if you thought about social media, where's that one platform that a real estate professional should start to hang out to connect with directors of human resources in their marketplace?
Oh, absolutely. By far, LinkedIn.
My go-to. I love LinkedIn.
And
And
there's some of the new things that you can do on LinkedIn right now, from writing articles, writing blogs, to all kinds of stuff. LinkedIn is definitely my business to business connection.
we were, when we entered into the foreclosure crisis, and we ended up with 5 master listing agreements in the midst of the foreclosure crisis for REOs. And the way that I was able to build relationships was because I was connecting strategically with anybody who was in business development, right? A lot of people were trying to connect with asset managers. They don't even let asset managers communicate with the world, right? So, but that director or VP of business development over on LinkedIn allowed me to make those connections. And I did it for free, not using the paid version of LinkedIn. But because you can post articles, you want to become the subject matter expert so that when people are searching on LinkedIn, your profile will come up. So you have to start talking about that subject in the manner that they're searching for it to become that EAH specialist, but have resources like forms and checklists that you can leverage ChatGPT to create. But it can also create all of your marketing. So those initial outreach letters and follow-up letters, ChatGPT can help you write those letters so that you have a true system and a follow-up system for reaching out to companies in your marketplace. And you can use tools like Hunter.io to see how they name their emails inside of a company. So when you know what the director of human resources name is, you can do, for me, let's say at Chicago Realtors, the naming system could be M Lemons at, Chicago Realtors. You'll know what that naming system is, leveraging that tool Hunter.io. And if you pull in the tool Humantic.ai, it will tell you the personality, the DISC personality of the director of human resources, because you can tailor your messaging based on the person's DISC profile. So,
Another real small thing that realtors can do, and using LinkedIn as well. Where do your friends work? Right? What companies do your friends work? So you find out where your friends are working, where are your sphere of influence working, and then using Hunter.io to find out how their email is drafted or how their email address is. Then go on LinkedIn and find out to see if you can find the human resource or the website.
I'm glad you brought that up because now I'm thinking about my next door neighbor. One is a sergeant. So working with the Chicago Police Department, going back in the day, you're making me go back. Back in the day, I would put flyers in the trunk of my car and go drop them off at CPS. But for Chicago Public Schools, I would come in and do quarterly home buyer seminars for instructors at their headquarters based on the relationships I built by dropping off the freaking flyers. So we're thinking fire department. I'm thinking Chicago Police Department or your municipality's police department. Your schools, are there private schools, right? Because you have public schools that definitely are going and looking at parochial and private schools to see who works there. Are there any truck depots? I got
Sure.
yeah,
Community colleges.
city colleges, community colleges. These are all resources that are available where there's a director of human resource that you can work with to be. Imagine doing those on college campuses
I know.
because we have a lot of people who've decided to go back to school.
If
Who
you
are
have,
working.
if you have kids in college, like I have kids in college, start there. Opportunities are endless.
They are endless.
Alma maters,
Yes, I was just on the campus of Chicago State University. Actually, that's another great idea. I did go to Chicago State and I went to St. Xavier. So I went to, I graduated from a local college, well, for undergrad and for my master's degree. I went to Central State University, Chicago State University, and St. Xavier University. Chicago State and St. Xavier are both here in the city of Chicago. So, Ebony, if someone wanted to reach out to you to hire you to come in to conduct an EAH training, either for their association, or their company, for their franchise, how would they reach out to you?
they can reach out to me. Best way is text message or phone call at 678-860-9408. And I will follow that up with and put them, follow that up with information from an email address and everything else.
Excellent. So reach out to Ebony either via text and or give her a call so that you can train all of your licensees on the employer assisted housing program, where you can become a new force in your marketplace, and your agents will be able to secure more signed buyer representation agreements with offers of compensation, because they'll be able to infuse more money into every single real estate deal. Ebony, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Marky, for always a pleasure.
Thank you.